All right. Hey YouTube, how you doing? It's Max. So, this video is going to be about how to improve your relationships. It's been a while since I've made a desktop discussion style video. Mostly been doing my game. In the last one, I was talking a lot about, I guess, how I was feeling like I was struggling with self-improvement and I never actually watched that video back. I probably should, but I think this whole concept of trying to, improve relationships, maintaining positive mental behaviors, healthy, a good healthy mental, it's all important, especially in this day and age. And lately, I've been watching these YouTube videos. This channel called Healthy Gamer GG. It's run by this guy named Dr. K, who's, I believe, a licensed psychiatrist. I think he went to medical school. He went to Harvard. Very well accredited, qualified guy. And I've been watching his stuff, and um, you know, it's I don't know a whole lot about psychiatry. I'm not like a qualified, but I do think that what he does, what I've seen is very positive, really cool stuff. Um, and my impression of this, like what he does in like an elevator pitch, I believe he's all about like not labeling people by like certain demographics. He's like why it's called Healthy Gamer GG. I think it was like originally geared towards like the negative impressions of gamer culture and just how gamers can be toxic and stuff like that, and just kind of like trying to really dissect I guess this kind of mental and I guess I kind of resonate with this because I like the idea of seeing people as individuals and not necessarily doing like a whole labeling people by certain um, labels or demographics, like, especially, I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but just wanted to really highlight this. But going back to the thing, just trying not to like, judge people too much on like their political views or their religious views, or, if someone says something racist, how can we like bridge this kind of gap in communication rather than kind of burn that bridge, if you know what I mean. And I think this is applicable in making what the title of the video is about, improving relationships with making friends, um, whether you have a teammate in some sort of online video game or a teammate in the real life, like at your job, a coworker. Just really trying not to point fingers at other people, be like, it's your fault, coworker, it's not my fault. um, Kind of pointing fingers. I've heard a lot, so and so is lazy, so and so is undeserving of, this job position. I see this a lot with celebrities, people being like, oh, this athlete's no good, or, why is this musician making so much money? Um, and I think that this is kind of a good framework to kind of lead into how I'm going to talk about improving relationships in my own life. Um, I think that, but also just going back to the YouTube content creator, Healthy Gamer GG, I just think that this sort of, these videos kind of stand out to me as it's not just like kind of like your standard YouTube video where it's like these are 5 facts on how to improve. I think what I like about this style is how it's very like podcast based almost. Like it's like on a stream, and oftentimes it will be like a live therapy session, which sounds very weird at first, but I think that like it's almost like this consultation sort of thing where I guess the other person has agreed to come on, and they're just very vulnerable with themselves, and just the community as a whole is just very accepting and very tries to be constructive in helping people out. And I think that it's just something that we've been talking about, like mental health, but like the why aspect and like actually taking action. I think that Dr. K is doing a great job. uh, there's been big name internet celebrities who have gone on there, like Pokimane and Moist Critical, whom I've never really watched before this kind of channel. So it's kind of refreshing to see like these celebrities in like a light that I haven't really seen them before, but well, like I've seen them before, like I know of them, but I haven't really watched their stuff. Anyway, bottom line, I think you should check it out. I'll put a link in the description. You probably already know about them, but yeah, I just figured I'd do that since that was a big inspiration watching those videos to make this video. Um, and I don't think that what I'm gonna say they'll necessarily agree with, but this is just my not a licensed psychiatrist takes on how to improve relationships from my experience. I'll go through a little bit about like my experience real quick. My advice is going to be like real short, but at least just to like establish some sort of like where I'm coming from as a person. So, I'm not a licensed psychiatrist. I don't think that I'm qualified necessarily to give you advice on any of these types of things, but I figured that, there's a lot of videos like this on YouTube. And I don't know if what I have to say is unique per se, but, you know, we'll just talk about that when we get there. But ultimately, I just see like a lot of, especially like after the pandemic, a lot of people seem to, like, how do I, um, make friends? How do I, find a love interest, in this kind of like 21st century digital age where everyone's kind of home alone kind of thing. And even like some like anyway, everything's like virtual and all that stuff. I think that I've just, I guess, noticed a lot of people seeking relationship advice, and I guess from my experiences, I guess just a little bit about me. I guess I have a personal Discord channel. I don't really use social media. I looked up this like statistic actually, and it said like the average person has about 8 friends. And I would say that I have this like personal Discord, and it's pretty active. I think it's like active every single day kind of thing, and it's all people that we know, kind of like what I feel like social media should be like Facebook or something like that. But instead of it, you just like kind of like adding friends for like the number count or whatever, like Instagram followers or anything like that. It's like just people in this Discord who uh who all like know each other either on a first name basis or have a mutual friend who knows them on a first name basis. It's very like, I think a positive environment. And I think that it has about like 40 or 50 members of just like people that I would say are like friends. So this isn't really meant to brag or anything, but it's just to point out that I am this introverted, um, I'm an introverted person. I don't really go out of my way to try to make new friends. It just kind of happens. And I think that, the philosophy that I'm going to, I guess, kind of explain for the rest of this video could sort of help you kind of, um, I guess, be better equipped at making friends. I don't know if that's makes a whole lot of sense. Again, not really trying to be boastful. The intention of this video overall is just to kind of share my experience, and if this advice helps anyone out there, then that would be awesome. But this is probably the length of like a normal video like this. I'll get right into it. The longest intro ever. So the point of this video, um, this is the point of the video, I guess, where I would, list my top five. Uh, this is how you improve your relationship kind of things. But this isn't going to be one of those videos. Um, as this kind of INTJ personality, if you know what the Myers Briggs is, my brain is all wired to kind of design these logical systems. And kind of avoid people, kind of avoid any sort of like real world interaction whatsoever. And I think that it's very interesting because when you look at relationships, it's like the complete opposite of that. There isn't really a hard coded rubric on how to interact with people. And, every person is unique and different, which is kind of what I was trying to allude to early on. in this video. I think that, but I think it's very hard to navigate that. And I think that when you kind of look at this kind of revelation of like, relationships aren't a hard coded rubric, you can kind of interpret this in one of two ways. Either it's kind of a weight off your shoulders in a way, or that kind of revelation of, there isn't any rule book, just made relationships even more complicated and confusing. And it kind of feels like this bottomless abyss. And I think the goal for this video is to try to help, if you're struggling with relationships, see relationships as this relaxed experience as opposed to an anxiety provoking one. So going back to the whole relationships aren't a coded rule book kind of thing, there's like objectivity and subjectivity. And objectivity is like black and white. Subjectivity is like super colorful and messy and all that stuff. And as this person who's kind of always trying to strive for an objective, systemized approach, I think that this is a good way to kind of like interpret that. So if you're like trying to use a systemized approach, you just start to talk like an NPC in a video game, if that makes sense. Like if you've ever had to do small talk with someone and you just kind of like go through this like scripted list of like things to talk about, like, how's school going? Oh, that's cool. Oh, how's your job? Oh, what are you doing this weekend? That's all boring. That's not really building a relationship. That's this systemized approach, and we need to like kind of, it's, might be, a good conversation starter to break the tension or something, but that's not really what you do to make friends. I think relationships, how I see them, it's sort of like trying to learn how to swim in a flowing river, right? And I think a lot of like guides, they'll try to like give you this kind of advice on how to build a raft to learn how to swim in the river. And I don't think that this really helps that much, because these rafts, you don't learn how to swim from on a ship. You have to get in the water, and you have to get that, you have got to breathe water into your lungs, and you got to drown in order to like learn how to swim. And this is kind of metaphorically speaking. But because like the cool thing about relationships as opposed to actually learning how to swim is that if you like drown in a relationship, you don't die. And that's kind of like, I guess, the in one of the videos that GG Gaming guy was doing, he talked about like pearls of wisdom, and I think that's like a pearl of wisdom right there. Like drowning is basically your experience points in a relationship. Failing actually is, it's very counterintuitive, but I think that failing actually is the experience points. And when you fail enough, you start to level up. And each relationship is sort of like a new boss fight. If you play video games, I'm using a lot of video game analogies, but I feel like each relationship is like a new boss fight. And it takes a lot of losing to the boss to learn the mechanics of the boss and adapt to that boss fight. And it's awkward at first, and you're gonna die many times. And we all hate dying. We all hate, losing, and we all want to like rage quit and do something like just go kill mobs, easy creatures, and not go fight the boss. But in order to get that, reap the rewards of the relationship, you have to learn the boss mechanics. If you want to start getting those good RNG drops, you got to learn the boss mechanics so you can learn the boss fights. And once you learn the boss fights, then you can start kind of like auto braining that relationship, and that's where the relationship really takes off. But it takes that kind of that failure in the beginning to really get the ball rolling with that relationship. And each new person, it's not using the same mechanics from one boss fight and going to the next one. You might have some crossovers, but each boss fight is, in theory, different than any other boss fight. Um, and so I think that's how you really need to start looking at relationships, like individual boss fights. Um, and it's like, I guess in life we're just always taught that like winning is the path to success, right? Like we always strive to have like a 100% win rate. When people who play like video games with like kill death assist ratios, it's always like you gotta get, all kills, no deaths, that kind of stuff. We're kind of taught in school and stuff not to make any mistakes. And I think if you get one thing out of this video, I think that you should learn how to embrace failure. I think that you should learn how to limit test and fail faster so that you can succeed. Um, and so, I guess, why do I think that you should fail? I think that one of the biggest pillars of relationships is learning how to take ownership of your own failure. I think that you need to learn how to apologize when you make a mistake. And when you say, I'll do better next time, you have to mean it. And when you have this data of why you failed, then you can use that to kind of build upon and kind of learn from these mistakes. And I think the faster you're able to do that, the faster you're able to make genuine friendships. I think another different analogy, if you're not really a huge gamer, I think relationships are very similar to like stories. So if you're familiar with like, if you read books or if you watch movies, there's always conflict in every story. And I think that this failure is very similar to conflict in a story. And the hero of the story isn't going to get to the end of the story without there being any conflict. And I think relationships are very similar. I think that a relationship with a friend, if you go, 10 years with this friend and it's just pure blissful interactions, you have no fights whatsoever. I think that this is a sign of an untrue relationship, if that makes sense. I think that it's natural that humans will clash. There will be conflicts, and I think that this is something that we all kind of fear, but it's something that we can't really avoid in life. We're always going to have people who challenge our worldview, and I think that when we are able to sort of allow ourselves to be challenged, um, that builds growth. Um, and I feel like your relationships, will not be defined by, how many people you don't piss off, right? I feel like, it's impossible to please everybody. Um, and your relationships, it's not about, let me rephrase that. It's not about like, you're gonna piss someone off no matter what, but it's really how you bounce back from those situations, those conflicts, that failure, that really defines the relationship. It defines how adaptable you are, how open-minded you are, how much you're willing to listen instead of how much you speak. It's not really about winning the debate. It's about kind of finding a compromise. um, you know, I think that there's a degree of emotional intelligence that needs to be kind of acquired. You need to be aware of, I guess, your own intrapersonal, I think, your own self. What are what are your quirks? What are your flaws? Is there anything that you do that is really, kind of the cause of your failures? If you keep pushing people away with your failures, what's causing that? You need to be understanding of all the different ranges of emotions. So when you're failing and you're, experiencing that grief, you can empathize when someone else is experiencing that grief. When you feel sadness, when you feel angry, you can kind of refer to these situations where you were in those, having those experiences, and that way you're able to connect with other people who are, when they fail, you can be there for them. Um, so yeah, pretty much strong relationships, in my opinion, are built on conflict and are built on failure. Um, and I think that again, just to reiterate, if you've gone, I think I even said 10 years. If you got 10 years without a single like qualm with a person, I feel like the chances of at least one of you kind of wearing a mask is pretty certain. And I don't think that that's really a relationship if you have to kind of hide your true feelings in order to prevent this conflict, to prevent failure. So I guess, why am I saying fail faster? Just to kind of reiterate, I think like a relationship is also, if you don't like video games, you don't like stories, it's also like working out at the gym. And you need to break your muscles down in order to grow. With relationships, you need to experience all the emotions, like I've been saying. So you got to work out all your muscles, and it's not just your physical muscles, like when you're working out, it's all your emotional muscles, all of your, um, I guess, different feels and whatnot. And, coming from like someone who, if you know Myers-Briggs, INTJ, I am very bad at, emotions, but it's something that I kind of need to work on all the time, and just kind of remind myself about like being more emotional, being more in in tune with like feelings, and not just looking at things with an objective mindset. Um, I think that nobody wants to be friends with someone who is too guarded, right? So no one wants to be friends with someone who just wears a hazmat suit, who is afraid of failure, who is afraid of being vulnerable. Uh, I don't think anyone wants to be friends with someone on the other end of the spectrum. I don't know if this is the other end of the spectrum, but no one wants to be friends with someone who is too perfect either. So let's say, like, you're like, oh, well, I never make mistakes. Do you really want to be friends with someone who never makes any mistakes ever? Because whenever you fail, you're just going to feel even worse about yourself, because this person who never makes mistakes, they aren't going to really be able to empathize with my situation. So being this flawlessly perfect individual, um, just doesn't make you very appealing, because it doesn't make you very relatable. um, you know, I also think it's sort of like, if you're, someone who is like, um, uh, this might be a bad example, but someone who is just like super like out of touch with society because they are like super wealthy or super like privileged or something. If you know one of those kinds of people, they kind of live in like a bubble or something, and they just can't relate to the kind of struggles you're going through. It's kind of like that. Um, but also, I don't think that anyone wants to be friends with someone who constantly fails, but also never learns or seeks to improve themselves. So if you're just failing to fail, and you're just like, oh, I'll improve, and you never improve, and you start to become this burden who never really learns or grows, then people are gonna get fed up with that. But I can guarantee that, if you're failing, people like to help other people. So if you are, able to open up and be vulnerable, um, that's very that can be very attractive to other people who, genuinely want to help, because it makes them feel good. You learn a lesson. People live like almost, it's one of those things where people learn through like communal kind of interactions. I forget where I heard this from, but it's kind of like one of those, like group therapy sessions, where you kind of like, someone kind of explains, the addiction to like, alcohol or something that they're going through. And just by hearing that story and having that emotional response to that story, that helps you kind of learn that lesson without having to go through that. So if you're able to kind of like, this might be a weird kind of, not the best way to explain this at all, but if you can, I don't want to say like be that example, be that failure, um, then other people learn from your mistakes. I don't think that's what I'm trying to say, but pretty much I'm trying to just say that, um, you know, just fail faster, learn from your mistakes, be open, be vulnerable. Relationships are basically just this journey of ebbs and flows. It's like going on a roller coaster. It's going up and down. It's not just going only up or only down. It's the combination of both. You need the failure, you need the conflict. Um, And this is again just my philosophy. That is my opinion. It may not be foolproof. It's not something that I have tested and it has a 100% success rate. It's just my opinion on what I think has been some of the more meaningful advice that I've had over the course of my life. I think that, my relationships for the most part with people are pretty healthy. And I don't really have a whole lot of like, um, I'd say I'm pretty privileged in that respect. But I think that some of this is also just being um, you know open-minded and just what I've been talking about. If you fail with some grace. And these are things that I haven't even mastered. So like there are still times where I am, you know, um, failing in very ugly ways, and I can definitely still continue to improve. So yeah, it's not a destination, it's just a journey. I think that this philosophy also applies to if you're not just looking for friendships, but also like significant other relationships. I understand that this isn't really covering like where to go meet people or whatnot. Um, People devote entire YouTube channels to like these kinds of questions, like how do I make friends? How do I, find uh, you know, someone who I can, like maybe get married to eventually. This video isn't really meant to address all of those questions, but I think that applying these principles um, of like just like what I've been saying can help at least kind of give you a foundation to work from to then take these relationships to friendships or to something more romantic or whatever. And I think that, it's just a better foundation than trying to be super witty with like catchy pickup lines or trying to, be super charismatic or like super good looking. I think that these are all fine if they're you, but if they're not you, and you're just kind of going out of your way to try to be like witty or charismatic or good looking, I don't think that that's going to be a solid foundation for you. But I think that learning from your mistakes is something that will help everybody out in relationships, in everything, all your different types of endeavors in life. Um, but yeah, you know, this is just again uh, one last thing. I feel like I always say this like 20 times, but just my opinions. If you have any, criticisms, feel free to, shoot them down below or whatever. Um, I don't think that, I, I just, if I have to, I guess, like, end on one thing, just say don't be afraid to fail. And, if your friend or whatever person in your relationship isn't understanding of your failure, I think that either you need to learn how to fall a bit more gracefully in your failure, or, ultimately maybe they're not worth being your friend in the end anyway. Um, but yeah, hopefully this made sense. Probably very choppy in some areas. Hope that you have a good rest of your day. I don't know why I'm still up. It's very late. I just felt like making a video. I'll see you later. Bye.